Okay, welcome everyone, and a good Erev Shabbos. As we learn, sponsored by AB Spry for the safety of our troops and their success, and for the safety of Yidden all over the globe, for Issazev Ben Yuta, by Shimon Klein, Lili Nishmas Asher Anshel Ben Yehuda, Gittel Bas Shimon Pinchas, by Irving Fishbaum, for the Gesund of Issa Ben Rezel, and Eliezer Ben Rezel, for Avigdoraya Ben Rivka, and Meir Ben Chaya Sarah. We welcome in over here Ben Zion Cohn, A.B. Spry, Baruch Ian, Eddie Chazan, Irving Fishbaum, Aaron Swade, Menachem Yamansky, Yitzi Muller, Nachman Chaplin, Michal, Shimon Klein, Ruvain Pollack, Moshe Lehman, Marshall Castle, Shimon Deer, Dr. Guy, Yitzi Fuchs, Abe Arbach, Rabbi Kranz, Ilya Shutman, Jay Siegel is just joining us. David Helfgott on Kololoshin here in the shul on a very cold night. We have the pleasure of having Reb Blumenfeld and Gedalia and Rich Kramer and Rich Lerner and Saba and Ruvain Shabbat and Reb Avram. It's really wonderful that all of you come and make this shir such a beautiful shir. We are holding on Daf Ayin Vav Amid Beis, and we're holding by 2 lines from the bottom. And Rabbi say, brace yourself, because Daf Ayin Zayin, you need to have eyes, like Aaron Swade said. You need to, Ayin Zayin is eyes, strength. You need to have a lot of eyes for this. It's going to be ready to have your finger on the page. Be ready to turn it. There isn't even time to eat a Frank.
Today's burger, no Frank.
Now, so let's discuss. We're talking about, of course, we know that it starts with Marshall stealing, right? So nobody could forget that. As we learn also the first Shalema for Yaakov and Tobachaya. So what happened over here is Marshall stole from A.B. Hektish. In other words, A.B. was makdish something, but it was of the Hariyolai variety. It was a neder. So therefore we said that although A.B. was makdish it, but since he's chayev b'achriyusai, if it gets lost or it gets stolen, he would be responsible. So it's still considered like it's his, and therefore Marshall, when he steals it and slaughters it, he's going to be chayev. The question, however, is since this is going according to Reb Shimon, why, if Marshall slaughters it, is he chayev? Slaughtering kachim outside of the temple is shrutei chutz. It's not going to be able to be eaten. And according to Reb Shimon, shchita she'ena ru'uya lo yishma shchita. A shchita that's not fit, that doesn't make it eaten, is not fit. Then it shouldn't be considered shchita, and Marshall shouldn't be chayev. So the Gemara answered 3 answers. One answer is that he stole A.B.'s carbon and he shechted it in the temple for the sake of A.B. So therefore, it was a good shechita and it can be eaten. So the Gemara says, so then why is Marshall chayiv? He essentially returned it back to A.B. So the Gemara says, yeah, but they spilled the blood. So therefore, it wasn't good. But at the time of the shechita, it was a shechita ru'uya, and that's why Marshall is chayiv. That's one answer. Another answer, that was one opinion in the name of Rabbi Yechon. Ravin says that Marshall stole it from A.B., shechted it in the temple, but he shechted it shaloi lishmav, not for A.B.'s sake. Now, still, the animal could be eaten, because Shalai Lishma is still kosher except if it's a Chatas or a Korban Pesach, but otherwise it's kosher, just it's Loi Olu L'Bayim L'Shem Chayvi. Abi doesn't yotze the mitzvah, and that's why Marshall pays. Reish Lakish says a third pshat. Reish Lakish says that Marshall stole it, it was hektish, it got a mum. And therefore, once it has a mum, you could shecht it outside of the temple. Right? Because only if it's a tamim you can't, but you can shecht it outside of the temple and then redeem it. But the Gemara had a problem. Why should Marshall be chayiv? At the time he shechted it, it's not a shchita re'uya until it's redeemed. Because until then you can't eat it. So at the time of the shchita, it was a shchita she'eina re'uya because it can't be eaten until it's redeemed. So therefore you shouldn't be chayiv. So the Gemara says that Reb Shimon holds kala oimed lepadas kepadi dami. Whatever is ready to be redeemed, it's as if it's already redeemed. And the Gemara says, how do we know that that's Reb Shimon's opinion? And that's where we open up now. 2 lines from the bottom of Daf Ayin Vav Amud Beis. V'kala oimed liftais kepadi dami. Anything that's ready to be redeemed as if it's redeemed. Now, remember again, we said that we learn out from Mikol Machal Asher Ye'achel, from any food that you eat, that it's opinion of Reb Shimon that in order for food stuff to be susceptible to contamination, it has to once have been able to be eaten. As long as it has a shasa kosher, that it was once able to be eaten, then even now, if it's aser b'hana, it will still have a tumas oichlin. So the Gemara says, the Tani Reb Shimon Aimer para, the red cow, which of course we shecht, and it is kachim, even though it's not kedushas haguf, because it's not offered on the mizbeach, but it has kedushas damim. It's bought from public funds, from the trumas halishka, and we know that we subsequently will burn it, and its ash would be used to be mitar tmei mesim. So the para mitame tumas, it has susceptibility. It's susceptible to be contaminated. Why? It's not fit to be eaten. It's bought from communal funds. It's hektish. It's not fit. Why? Since before they burn it, when it's on the pyre, they could redeem it. And then if they redeem it, it would be able to be eaten. Now, but they didn't redeem it. So we see that even though they didn't actually redeem it, but since it was available to be redeemed, it's Aymed Liftais, because you could redeem it even from the buyer, it's as if it's redeemed and it had a Shasa Kaisha. As the Gemara says, Hoyel v'hoysel Shasa Kaisha. Where did it have a Shasa Kaisha? Because v'amarei shlakish Ayma Hoyer Reb Shimon para niptis al gabe marachasa. The para aduma, when it's on the pyre ready to be burnt, you could redeem it, and then once you redeem it, it would be able to be eaten. But they didn't redeem it, so why is it? In the end, they didn't redeem it. And it was never fit to be eaten. Alma kala aymed liftais kepadi dami. Whatever is ready to be redeemed, it's as if it's redeemed. So now, remember we said that we had different scenarios. According to Reish Lakish, it's talking about where Marshall stole the animal of Hektish from Abi and it got a mum, and he slaughtered it outside. So Bishleim Reb Yochanan lo yamak Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Reb Yochanan doesn't explain. It's talking about a Baal Mum. The Kabay Lok Melamasnis and Afilu B'Tmimin. He wants to say that the Mishnah is talking about an unblemished animal because the stam animal of Hektish is unblemished. El Reish Lakish my time lo yamak Reb Yochanan. But why doesn't Reish Lakish explain like Reb Yochanan that it's talking about where he stole it from Abi and he offered it up in the temple? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan has an interesting opinion. Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is, the Torah says that Marshall has to pay daled v'hei, 4 for a sheep or 5 for an ox, when it's utvachai o mecharai, where he slaughtered it or he sold it. Rabbi Yochanan holds the only time you're chayiv daled v'hei, where you slaughter it, is if it's also possible for you to be chayiv if you sold it. In the case where he stole hektish, it's not possible for him to sell it. You can't sell something of hektish. So, amalach utavachai, it says in the pasuk, utavachai oy mecharai, you slaughter it or you sell it. If it would be possible for Marshall to steal it and sell it, then he would be chayiv if he steals it and slaughters it. But the but where he can't sell it, like in our case when he stole from Abi to hektish, he can't sell it because something of hektish you can't sell. So therefore you're not chayiv if you slaughter it. And where he stole it from Abi and it's a tamim, you can't sell kedushas haguf, that which is unblemished, it's only fit for the altar, less no betvicha. Now this question of whether you could be chayiv for the slaughtering even though you wouldn't be chayiv for the mechira, ba'azlu l'tamayu, because they argue about it the other way around. What would be if you can't sell it? I mean, what would be if you could sell it, but you can't slaughter it? What would be a case? According to Reb Shimon, if the animal is if Marshall steals a treifa, if Marshall sees a treifa, that's an animal that has a fatal flaw, a fatal wound, it wouldn't be able to live for a year. When we get up to Chulin, we're going to learn a fascinating parak called Elu Treifus, where we'll learn all the types of fatal flaws in an animal that it can't live for a year, like a perforated membrane of the brain, lo yaleinu, right? And different fatal flaws. So remember, according to Reb Shimon, you're not chayiv for shchita. You're not chayiv for shchita if it's shchita she'eina ruya, if it doesn't allow it to be eaten. The question is, what will Reb Shimon hold if Marshall steals a treif and he sells it? So there it's the other way around. It's not possible by shchita, because according to Reb Shimon, if you shech the treif, it's not a shchita because it's a shchita she'eina ruya. So it's not possible by shchita. Do we say since it's not possible by shchita, it's also not possible by mechira? Or do we not learn that way? So the Gemara says, if somebody sells, Marshall steals a treifa and sells it, l'divrei Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, that by the shchita he wouldn't be chayiv because that would be a shchita she'eina ru'uya. Reb Yochanan amar chayiv. Reb Yochanan goes according to his shita. He says it doesn't have to be eligible by both. We don't say that you're only chayiv if you could do both slaughtering and selling it. Reish Lakish amar pater. Reish Lakish says since according to Reb Shimon, if Marshall would steal the treif and shecht it, he wouldn't be chayiv because that's a shchita she'eina ruya. It doesn't make it permitted because the treif can't be eaten. So he holds you're also not chayiv for selling it. Rabbi Yochanan amar chayiv because afal gav the lesser b'tficha, even though you can't slaughter it, isa b'mechira, but you could sell it. Ral Reish Lakish amar pater kaven the lesser b'tficha. If Marshall would steal it and slaughter it, he's not chayiv because that would be a shchita she'eina ruya. So lesser b'mechira, therefore you're not chayiv because the only time you're chayiv, since the pasuk says utvachai mecharai, it has to be available for both. So Eisvei asked the Gemara. And you notice that Aaron has his stopwatch out. He wants to know how long the daf. He wants to know if we could get, Aaron said that if we get it done in less than 15 minutes, he's putting it in the Hall of Fame, the Guinness World Book of Records. So anyway, Eisvei Reb Yochanan Reb Shimon Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that it doesn't have to be both, it could be one without the other. So he asks on Reish Lakish, we learned Ganav Kloyim, if Marshall stole a hybrid. In other words, this was an animal that was, it was a crossbreed of a goat and a sheep. To be accurate, a goat and a ewe, E-W-E. There was a grandmaster by that name. I'm not sure how he pronounced his name, but he was one of the world champions. E-W-E. He was one of the world champions in chess. Brilliant player. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about over here. We're not crossbreeding it with a chess master. That's not what it means. I saw Baruch had a question. No, that's not what it means, Baruch. Ganav Kloyim. If, let's say, Marshall stole a hybrid from Abi, Utvacha, and he slaughtered it, Treifa. If he stole a treifa from Abi, Umachara, and he sold it, Mishalem Tashlumei Bava Kama Daf. So now Rabbi Yochanan says, you see, it says that if he stole a treifa and he sold it, isn't this going according to my Lav Reb Shimoni? Isn't this going according to Reb Shimon, who says that if he slaughtered the treifa, he wouldn't be chai because it's shchita she'eina ru'uya? And although you're not chai for slaughtering it, you are chai for selling it. So it's a raya to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Even though it's not shaykh to slaughter it, because slaughtering a treifa would be a shchita she'eina ru'uya, because the treifa can't be eaten, yet you're chayiv for selling it. Isei b'mechira. Amalei, so he says it's not going according to Reb Shimon. Loi Rabbanan, it's going according to the Rabbanan. So the Gemara says, so I don't understand, if it's going to according to the Rabbanan, why does it say only if you sell a treifa? Even if you slaughter a treifa, you're chayiv. Because Reb Shimon says you don't need a shchita ru'uya. So even though it's not able to be eaten, you're still chayiv. So Rabbanan, treifa mebechira isa, by a treifa, is it only if Marshall sells it? Bezricha lesa, it's not if he slaughtered it. Says the Gemara, well, you have that kash even if you learn it's going according to Reb Shimon. Because according to Reb Shimon, what about the Reisha? The Reisha says if Marshall steals kloyim and shechts it. It's only if he steals a hybrid and shechts it. If he steals a hybrid and sells it, he's not chayiv. Why not? The Elamai Reb Shimon kloyim betvicha isa are you chayiv by kloyim only if you slaughter it. But mechira lesa, if Marshall steals a hybrid and sells it, he's also chayiv. Elatona tvicha by kloyim, it says slaughter vu adin lemechira, and the same thing if he sold it. Emel Rabbanan nami. So if we say that it's going according to Rabbanan, when it says by treifa, if you sold it, einachanami, the same thing would be true if you slaughtered it. Tana mechira vu adin letvicha. Rabbi Yochanan says no. You know, at least according to me, that I say that by treifa there's a chiddush. Rabbi Yochanan Amalach Haimai, Iyamir Bishleimer Reb Shimon. If it's going according to Reb Shimon, that's why it only says by treifa mechira, and therefore, since it only says one by one of them, it says one by the other one. And I need a ton of treifa b'chada, ton of kloyim b'chada. That's why it only says one by kloyim. But Eli Iyamir Rabbanan, but if it's going according to Rabbanan, you could have mixed the whole thing up. You could have said, if Marshall steals kloyim or treifa, and he slaughters it or sells it, Ne'avinu v'nisninu, gun of kloyim or treifa, if you steal kloyim or treifa, tafchan u'mecharan, whether you slaughter it and sell it, misham tashlumi arba v'chamisha. So therefore, it's more mistav, it's going according to Reb Shimon, and that's why it only says one by treifa, because by treifa it's only shaykh to sell it, And once it says only one by treifa, so it says only one by kloyim. But it's a raya also that you could be chayiv by treifa for selling it, even though it's not eligible for slaughtering it. And you don't need, it has to be both tvicha and mechira, like Reish Lakish suggests. So Kasha, this is indeed a good question on Reish Lakish. The Gemara doesn't have an answer really for Reish Lakish. Now, here's the problem. We said that by stealing, if Marshall steals and slaughters or sells the kloyim, Marshall is chayav. But it says seh, and seh usually means where both parents are sheep or both parents are goats. We know this because by the carbon, but we'll learn like Taisa's pshat. By the pasuk, by the carbon Pesach, it says seh of ksavim or seh of izim. The seh means both a sheep and a goat. It's a generic term. So it says either of the ksavim or the izim. The question is, why does it say plural? It should say seh keves or seh eis. Why does it say ksavim and izim? So we learn out from there that when it says seh stam, it means where both parents are sheep or both parents are goats. And therefore that excludes a hybrid. So why do we say here you're chayiv if he steals and slaughters a hybrid? And that's the Gemara's next question. Kloyim, you say that Marshall is chayiv even if it's a hybrid, but sexiv, it says seh. V'amar Rava zeh bana of, we make an analogy from the Korban Pesach that kol mokum shenema seh eina elo lahitzias hakloyim. It means seh ksavim, where both parents are sheep, or seh izim, where both parents are goats, to exclude a hybrid. So why is Marshall chayiv? What Marshall says, what does the whole world want from me? Right? Don't answer that all at once, Rabbi say. Says the Gemara,
I was wondering about that.
Shani Yacha, it's different over here to Amakra Oy. There's an extra word Oy. It says Shar Oyseh. L'Rabbi says Akloy. To include that Marshall is chayiv even if he steals and shechts or sells a hybrid. So the Gemara says, does O usually include the Kol Oy L'Rabbi so? But Tanya, by Kachim, now the din is, by Kachim you can't bring a hybrid on the Mizbeach. And by Kachim it says, Shar Oy Kesef, Prat L'Kloyim. That excludes a hybrid, that it's not available. O A's, Prat L'Nidmeh. You could only bring a real goat. But if two sheep give birth to something that looks like a goat, a mutant, you're not allowed to bring it on the Mizbeach. So there you see that Oy comes to exclude. So Amar Rava, so Rava answers, Hacham in Yonei Dekra, V'Hacham in Yonei Dekra. Unlike that anti-Semitic former president of Harvard that says you have to take things into context, over there she was just a Meshugana. No, Meshugana that's too nice. She was a Rishas. But here, the Gemara basically says, L'havdal elef alfi alafim, you have to take it in context. It depends. Hacha gabe geneva dichsiv shar oiseh. Now that pasuk would exclude naturally a hybrid. Why? Because you cannot have a hybrid from a shar and a seh. Because a shar, its gestation is 9 months, and seh, its gestation is 5 months. And the Gemara says if they have a different gestation period, they can't mate together. They can't have a child. So Amar Rav Hacham in Yonah Dikra, Hacham in Yikra, Hacha Gabi Geneva Dichsiv Sharoi Seh, Shii Atri Yochaloitzi Kloyim Ibnayim. So therefore, the pasuk in its simple form is talking about without a hybrid. So oila rabbis klai. There, oy comes to include klai. Gabe kachim, but by kachim, dichsiv kesev ve'ez, it says a sheep and a goat, which have the same gestation period, and therefore we naturally think to include a hybrid. Sha'ata yochel oitzi kloim in b'neim. So therefore, the pasuk would indicate also whatever could come from the two of them. Then, when it adds the oy lamayetu, oy comes to exclude. So asks the Gemara, because Aaron will feel that he doesn't get his money's worth, so we have to go a little bit more. Otherwise, Aaron will send a letter to the editor. Says the Gemara, "V'agabe kachim nami." By kachim, it also says Nemar shor oy kesef, and over there you can't bring a hybrid from a shor and a kesef. So then the oy should include kloyim. She'enat yochel oitzi kloyim ebeneim v'nirbei. We should include it. Says the Gemara midaseifa lamayit, since from the end of the pasuk where it says kesef and eis, the O comes to exclude, because, so therefore we say this O also comes to exclude. Midaseifa lamait, reishanami lamait. So the Gemara says maybe we should say the other way around. Adarabba midareisha l'rabbi, since it says shara kesef, and there you can't have a hybrid from a shara and a kesef, so the O should include seifa nami l'rabbis. Then we should say the O in the seifa also comes to include, and we should say you should be able to bring kloyim on the mizbeach. So the Gemara says no. If you say it's l'mayet, we have two things to be mamayet. One is to exclude kloyim, and one is to exclude a mutant. Haimai, iyamri bishloim l'mayet, hu de itzdrach trei miyute. We need to exclude two things. The afal gav the imit kloyim. Even though we exclude a hybrid, itzdrach l'mute nidma, we have to exclude also mutant, because that mutant comes from actually two sheep. But if it comes to include trei libuye lama, why do we need to have two ribuyim? If we include even a hybrid, hashta kloyim irbele, and we know to include a hybrid because, as we said, from a shor and a seh, you can't have a hybrid, so O would come to include a hybrid. If we already include a hybrid, then we don't need to include a mutant, even if it comes from two different parents. So then a mutant which comes from the same parent surely should be allowed. If kloyim irbele, then nidma mebai. So therefore, since we wouldn't have a use for both O's if we come to say it includes, both must come to exclude, one to exclude a hybrid from the altar, and one to exclude a mutant from the altar. Now, Rabbi say a few things. First of all, shir on Motzei Shabbos is at 7:45. Second of all, we did the Mishnah Yomi already earlier. It's already on Torah Anytime, YouTube, Kol Haloshin, Facebook, and wherever. Because now we are going to do a chak, and it's a humdinger of a chak. So stay tuned for that. Marshall has been already putting Pepsi into himself, so he should have strength.
You like that one, huh?
Yes, I do. I hope you had me in mind when you had it.
That's why I sent out the picture.
Could you give me the green screen as we set up over here?
I got a question about the tray cup. How do you know it's a tray cup and it's not? Because it seemed like you're insinuating that he knew it was a tray.
Yeah, there are some animals that we know are a treifa, and it could have a certain amount of broken bones. There are certain treifas that we know even without a internal examination.